Hello, and welcome back to Living the Questions podcast. Today, I want to talk about the topic of asking for help, living into the question of where am I actually when it comes to my relationship with asking for help. And this actually comes from something that happened to me where I had a dream and I was sitting with the dream and I was realizing that there's so much more that is going on for me in a specific scenario around asking for help that then I even realized there's so much more of a blocker to it than I ever knew. I don't I wouldn't say that I didn't think that I there's a double negative in there. I would say that I definitely was aware that there's some struggle for me in asking for help and support. And I would also say that I wasn't aware of maybe just how much was happening unconsciously or how many places it was maybe coming up without me recognizing what those blockers look like. And so in my dream, I actually had kind of a real life scenario playing out that was bringing this up to the surface. And the dream basically was me needing to drive a couple hours distance in like a windy mountain pass. And I could tell in the dream that the weather was about to turn and it was about to be a really long stretch of rainy, bad weather, windy driving for hours ahead of me. And in the dream, what was happening for me is what was happening or what happens for me in real life when those scenarios present themselves, which is that I have a lot of anxiety come up. And so I was running through some options where I was wondering, should I just stay put where I was and wait for the weather to turn and then take the drive? I was thinking through, there was another person who was going to be driving with me in this scenario. And I was thinking in my head of what if maybe they would be open to driving? That would actually really help my nervous system. But not once in my dream did I think about actually asking for help in that scenario or asking for support or think that it was something that I needed in that moment. What I woke up feeling instead when I was coming out of that dream was, ugh, why was I trying to manipulate somebody to do the thing that I didn't want to do? That was my takeaway from that scenario. My takeaway was there was something that I didn't want to do, and I was hoping someone else would do it for me. Is that really what I was up to in the dream? Is that really what I'm up to in real life? I don't believe so. Maybe there are times where that's the case, but in this scenario, what was really happening for me, if this was a real life scenario, because this actually has happened many a time for me, it was that my nervous system was dysregulated. It was that my nervous system was highlighting something for me, letting me know something was going on. I was in need of support. And maybe that support won't always look the same, right? Like support in that moment might be, is somebody else available to do this drive? My nervous system is really activated, and it would be really supportive to me if someone could take the role of the driver. Maybe it could also look like ways that I've taken care of myself in that before when I'm driving on my own is calling somebody, a trusted person to me, someone I love, and feeling like another being was there with me so that I'm not alone in this drive. Um, it might also be taking shifts with somebody if there is somebody else in the car. There could be a million different scenarios here for this. And the way that I was hearing it for myself was that there was a hard thing and I was trying to avoid doing it. That's what I have in my head instead of asking for support with something that was going on and coming up for me. Instead of caring for that, I read it as me avoiding doing a hard thing, me not, you know, like doing the adult quote unquote thing, me not just like bucking up and doing it, just being brave enough to do it. And what if, though, because this is what I was sitting with after the dream, what if, though, the brave thing in that moment is actually asking for support? What if the brave thing isn't pushing through what's coming up for me as if that's not there? What if it's recognizing that, voicing that, instead of shaming that and bringing it to the table to be okay to be there, okay to be seen, and go after support? What if that's the brave thing? Or what if that's one of the brave things? And I think that that is really turning things like on its head for me. I think I just didn't realize how much I had been unconsciously believing this piece of I just need to power through and I need to do the hard thing to get through it. And sometimes we don't have a choice. Sometimes that is what we're faced with. And also, I'm curious, like, what what is that story stemming from? And I think that's something I'm definitely going to be living into and sit with. Why is that the belief that I have? Why is shame and this feeling of being the word like immature comes up, or as if I'm like childish in that moment. And what's interesting is in some ways I am, but not in I think not in the way that I am judging myself in that moment internally. I think the judgment comes from a space of feeling like you should be, quote unquote, you know, acting your age. You should be able to just do these things. This shouldn't bother you. There's so many shoulds here. Shouldn't bother you. This shouldn't affect you. You should just be able to brave this and do it. And come on, you don't need this support. What are we doing? And so there's something there like shaming me to quote be my age and or be an adult or that buck up kind of mentality. Um, and that feeling of it being immature or childish. The other thing that that's speaking to me when I'm sitting with this with curiosity and more expansion here is that it's a new thing, that if I've spent a lifetime of pushing how I've actually felt in these scenarios, not just in a car, but any moment where I've felt like this and this came up and I didn't know to be able to ask for this or didn't realize that there was an option to ask for help or that that's even something that I was maybe even after or knew to be after. I then I'm brand new at it. Then in a lot of ways I'm very very green at that. So what if that is just saying that? What if this quote immature feeling, this childish feeling is one telling me the part of myself that's coming up that I can tend to, and two, maybe is letting me know that I'm just new at something and we're always new at things. Like a child is new to this world. I am new to this. I'm new to asking for support in this way. I'm new to knowing that that's possible for me. I'm I'm new to that. And what if I meet that with kindness and compassion and recognize that that doesn't mean that I'm stunted, quote unquote, or held back from where I should be at this age, quote unquote, which I think we put on ourselves a lot. What if it just gives me the opportunity to be somewhere where I get to grow then from there rather than continuing to pretend like I'm not where I am and push down things because I think I should be somewhere else. And this is where that congruence piece comes back up again. It's, can we be where we are? It's not just, it's not collapsing the timeline, and it's not shaming ourselves for where we find ourselves when we actually come online to where we are. I think it doesn't mean that there aren't real things in our life where we can take a good hard look about where we might not be holding the responsibility that maybe we need to be holding. And I think sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to be further than we actually have the capability of, because we're not giving ourselves the space to be able to grow in the ways that we could. And in this scenario, for me, it's interesting because I think I keep thinking about it like the the growth and the hard thing is learning how to be okay driving in the terrible conditions on a cliffside. But what if that's not actually the the lesson that's meant to come up, but the hard lesson for me here that's arising, that my nervous system is bringing forward in ways, is the asking for support. Really, is asking for support, because even if I'm the one in the driver's seat, the asking for support might legitimately mean that I just have somebody who has like a hand on me, because that helps me ground in that moment. That it's so much more than just a drive. It's about my nervous system. It's about recognizing that that's important to take care of, that that's important to listen to, that that's important to recognize that something is going on for it. And how can I go after supporting that? And how can I let other people know that that's something that I'm needing support in, whether they meet that or not? That's okay. And it is very unlikely that somebody will be able to meet it if I'm not sharing what's going on for me or go after support when I need it. People will not know that I'm needing that. And and what does that look like to actually gift that to each other? Yeah, because when am I the one that actually has space to support someone else? And when am I the one that's needing to go after that support? And can we make room for that to be okay, regardless of the age that we are, in any scenario that's coming up for us? Can we be honest about the support we need, and can we make room to go after that, to support one another, to go after support for ourselves, to learn how to support ourselves too in those moments, not because we need to be resilient and we need to be stronger than we are. We need to be able to do things alone. We need to grow up, quote unquote, and, just be able to do these things. What if we're drill sergeanting ourselves for no reason? What if that's not actually the way to grow forward? What if that's not actually the way to, quote, grow up? What if it's far more powerful to be honest about where we really are, and what what we need to move forward? What we need to be met in a moment? What if that's really okay? I don't know. I think that there's something there that I'm going to keep living into and keep sitting with. I feel like I didn't realize that this maybe seemingly simple scenario of a car drive actually held so much more to me, so much more wisdom, so much more invitation so much enlightenment for me around I'm, how I am blocking my own growth, how I am blocking my own deeper connection with others and myself. What is that feeling around asking for help that feels hard? And I think that's a big question. I know a lot of the time it's that fear of not being met and feeling vulnerable in the ask. I think what I was feeling in the dream, and it's interesting, I talk about it as a dream, but it's a very real life scenario for me. So I keep referencing the dream, but I'm like, but also this has happened. Um, yeah, it was embarrassment. I felt embarrassed that I was feeling how I was feeling. That I wished that that wasn't how I was feeling, that I felt less than for feeling it, that I felt childish for feeling it, and I didn't want that to be the case. And so in that scenario, in this dream, I think the idea of somebody else offering to drive rather than me having to ask for it mitigated me having to feel embarrassed or have to bring forward the fact of being seen as someone who felt uncomfortable in that scenario. I was telling myself a story about what that meant about me. And so it wasn't um, manipulation for someone else to do the hard thing, quote unquote. It was that I saw it as a difficult thing for me and my nervous system. And I was afraid to be seen in that. I was afraid to I was afraid to ask for the support that would be helpful to me in that moment because I was afraid to be seen as feeling that way, as I made it my identity, even maybe in that moment. And it's interesting because how I looked at it was less about my my relationship to support and to help and to what is really going on for me. And I looked at it more like avoidance. I looked at it more like, why are you avoiding doing hard things in your life? And my goodness, I am very grateful for the work I've been doing in my life to have the relationship that I have now because I know I know it to be true that I don't avoid doing hard things. And sure, there are some times where I don't want to do them. I would like to avoid them. But do I actively go after avoiding hard things in my life? Very, very, very rarely. I am more often than not, very frequently going headfirst into these things, which which is not always the most fun or comfortable route. There are times for sure where there's things that are, that I'm afraid of, that I'm new at, that I will pause on, that I'm still grappling with to have a different relationship with, to come in with responsibility, or I come in Bambi-legged and it it looks, not the way maybe that I would like it to look when it comes to facing things that are difficult, like conflict or confrontation. Those things can feel really hard for my nervous system when I think I've spent most of my life in the fawning, people pleasing world of things, which is a lot of conflict avoidance. And I know that we've talked before about in other episodes about, the beauty of confrontation and facing one another, facing something together, and the beauty that that can be. And that's still a learning lesson for me. That's still something that even like my body is still getting used to rewiring that feeling and discerning when it's safe and what that means to me. And it's so good to have this relationship with myself where I can see those nuances because in this moment when I'm sitting with that dream, that real life scenario that's happened for me with that the car and the inclement weather, or that drive and the inclement weather, I recognize that that actually isn't me getting up to that. That isn't me avoiding doing a hard thing. That it actually is, yeah, that me avoiding doing the hard thing is me actually being seen in my vulnerability in that moment. Me doing the hard thing is me recognizing right now. And when I was sitting with that dream then, that that I'm that I have this unconscious tape that's telling me that I should not be feeling how I'm feeling, and that I should be embarrassed about it, that I should be somewhere different, that I should not be feeling the way that I'm feeling. And I'm, yeah, and that I'm somehow burdening others around me if I were to bring that up or be seen in an anxious moment, or in a moment where I'm feeling tender and could use support. I didn't see it as that. I didn't see it as needing support. I saw it as me avoiding a hard thing. And where else in life are we getting up to that, where we're convincing ourselves that we're avoiding doing a hard thing, when in reality we're just having a hard time, when we're just needing support, needing help, and we're convinced that we just need to figure it out for ourselves, that we just need to, yeah, we need to, yeah, that somehow going it alone or powering through is the only way. What is the fear around asking for support? What is the fear around letting ourselves even know that we could use it, that we need it? Because I think that was the block in this for me, is that I wasn't even, of course, I felt the anxiety, but I wasn't even at a place where I saw it as I was needing support or could ask for it. The idea of asking for it didn't even really come up. And I think in real life scenarios when it did, like when someone would offer, I I would it would feel good to be met in that, but I didn't, again, realize it was the ask. I didn't realize that I didn't realize that that was support that I needed for the reasons that were coming up. Again, I kept coding it as I'm avoiding doing this hard thing, and this person is stepping in for me. And I think there's something there for me to live into, which I think is really beautiful and really powerful. There's so many layers to this. But yeah, where do we not even let ourselves know that there is support that we could use, and what is going on there that we could get curious about, that we could have a different relationship with? And when we start to do that, how do we meet ourselves tenderly when we do ask for support for the first time? What is a way that we can really hold and honor ourselves well when we're asking for support, when it feels really intimidating, maybe, to do so, especially mostly because of the judgments we have internally on ourselves that we likely project outside of ourselves onto the person we're asking, or onto somebody overhearing us ask that. What if it's okay to be where we are? What if it's okay to ask for support? What if it's okay to be met? And what if none of that means any of the judgments that we put upon ourselves when we do that? What if that's okay? Whew. Yeah. I just feel like there's so much here that I'm only just living into. And it's amazing how a dream can bring up a real world scenario that can seem maybe inconsequential. And yet it's so deeply profound. It's such a big conversation and stumbling block in life, in relationship. And what an avenue to go into it. What an avenue to go into it. And what a beautiful way to create a deeper relationship with myself, too, of, where am I hard on myself? Where am I harder on myself than I need to be? Where have I grown, too, in ways that I can celebrate? Like being able to say, oh, yeah, I can hear myself say that I was thinking that that was me avoiding doing hard things and sit with myself and have real groundedness, like a real feeling, embodied feeling of groundedness, being like, oh, yeah, but that's not actually what I'm getting up to there. That honesty with self, whew, it's taken a long time to grow and I'm still growing in it. Will forever be growing in it. And that feels really good to have to be able to say because so much of life had been that lack of trust, the not knowing, the not knowing who I was, like the knowing internally of who I was, but not being able to really connect with that. And so second guessing and doubting and, maybe I am avoiding hard things. That would have been a very real and has been a very real conversation with myself prior to this. And in this moment, it felt really good to say that out loud and to be able to say, "Oh yeah, no, I know that's not what I'm up to. Can I trust when I know that's not what I'm up to? Not, I'm not trying to get one over on my own internal self. And if I were, can I be honest with myself about that? But also not make myself a villain in some scenario when that's not really what's happening. Can I actually meet myself where I am so that I can meet myself where I am? Can I not put things on myself that are unnecessary to weigh myself down? Like thinking I need to be in a different place because of my age than I am, and to know that that actually a beautiful way to be responsible in life if I'm wanting to get up to something that matches my age, to be responsible, to be thoughtful, to be curious, to be compassionate. Those are powerful things to step into. And what does that look like in that scenario? It's not, I need to be further than I am because of my age. It's, am I using all of the tools that I've learned up until this point to meet myself in this very moment? And what will that allow for me moving forward? What spaciousness will that offer me to actually be able to grow, to create a pathway forward rather than keeping myself, quote, stunted, if that's really what I believe is happening there? Where are we doing ourselves a disservice, thinking that we need to be further due to whatever parameters we're putting on ourselves, you know, whether it's our age or certain milestones of things or whatever it might be. Age is for some reason really coming up for me in this one because I think we use that so much. But it's a million different things that we categorize each other in and we place upon ourselves and then feel shame for not being somewhere already. But how do we get there if we don't allow ourselves to be green at something and really allow ourselves to meet our own self there and then ask for help and support where we can so that we can get further, so that we can grow if we're really wanting to grow or feel that we've needed to or would just like to. I don't know, there's so many questions to live into within this, but that's what's coming up for me today. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface with this one, but it feels powerful to me. And I'm so curious what comes up for you. What are things that you're recognizing? Maybe are conversations that are harsher than you realize that are happening internally for you. Where do you maybe struggle asking for support? Where are blockages internally for you that you're just starting to realize are blockages? And how would you like to compassionately and curiously meet those and be met in those? And how do we take good care of ourselves regardless of how we're met? These are the questions that I'm going to leave this conversation with today for myself, for sure. And I pose out to you if it speaks to you. I love getting to dive into this. And I love that this episode in particular feels like one where I feel like I have even more questions at the end of it than I came in with it. It feels like I'm definitely going to be revisiting this one again in one of the episodes coming up. So I will meet you there. Thank you so much for being here today. And yeah, invitation to just be kind and generous with your own self and current place in life and growth forward. May you meet yourself in really honest and kind ways. And may that model how we meet one another. I'll see you next week.